All aboard. New tracks. All aboard. Good evening. My name is Jim Kellow. Welcome to New Tracks Meetup. This is where mentors help modelers build. Thanks so much for coming this evening. We really do appreciate seeing you. Hope you'll come back often. Hope you'll tell your friends about us. If you're new to the show, please go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and register and subscribe to the website. You'll get an email. And if you confirm the email address, then you'll get the login information for all of our future shows and be able to also pass that information along to your friends if you think they would be interested in joining us. We ask you not to post it on a regular bulletin board or Facebook group or anything like that for security reasons, but if you want to send the login that you receive to your friends so that they can also join us, there's nothing wrong with that, and we would encourage you to do it. We need a lot of help running these shows and producing these shows. And we hope that you'll consider giving us a little bit of time in whatever area that you feel comfortable in. Right now, we really need some help in our digital marketing part of it to post information on various digital sites to tell people about the show and about the things that are coming up, the things that we're doing. We think that we have some great shows and some great guests for our shows, and we'd like to get out the word as much as we possibly can, and we need your help to do that. So if you'd be interested in helping us a little bit in that regard, please let me know. You can find my email and even telephone number on our website, newtracksmodeling.com. So please let me know. We welcome you and hope that you want to volunteer to help us. The next My Bill that we have coming up is July the 24th. Some people have said, well, what is the My Bill? Well, the My Bill is for people that are builders. It's for people that have built models and would like to share what they've done with us, either in the construction phase of your project or in the finished model that you've finished building. Jeremy White is the moderator for our shows. And Jeremy, I will turn it over to you, sir, for your comments. Well, it doesn't seem like Jeremy's here tonight, so I will again say we really hope that you'll consider joining us for that My Bill show. Chris, of course, normally runs these shows, but he's going to be out of the country for this summer, and Jeremy has been kind enough to take over for him. You can reach Jeremy. I think his email address is in the chat function now, or it certainly is available on the website. And if you'll let him know that you'd like to be in the show, then he'll be able to include you. We have two special segments of that show, one for the people that have been following along with Rick and Maureen Hunter and their build of their King Trust Bridge, and the other one for the modelers who've been following around with Bill Davis in his building of the closed vestibule baggage car by LaBelle. And we encourage the other people that are building anything, scratch building, whatever you're doing. We encourage you to share it with us. We'd like to see what you're doing and like to be able to keep track of the modelers that are really on the show. So thank you so much, and we hope you'll do that. Now I'd like to go to Ted Becker for the quick tips of the evening. Ted, welcome.
I'll do two quick ones tonight. The reason I'm doing two is that this first one is kind of obscure and probably not helpful to a lot of people. But if you've bought Atlas decoders that come in these plastic boxes and you have a ramp meter, these Atlas decoder boxes are a perfect fit. So that's one quick tip. The real tip for tonight is a tool that's got a lot of different names. This page that I'm showing is I did a search on Amazon for a ball point or ball tip stylus. You can see there's a number of different varieties, all different sizes. The primary thing these are good for is for rubbing down dry transfers. They're smooth, spherical ball ends. Like I said, there's a variety of sizes. You can use the larger ones if you've got a larger surface area to rub down. And then you have the finer tips if you need to get into tight spaces. They're also excellent for burnishing down the masking tape. If you got to do some tight masking and you want to burnish it down real tight, they're good for that. To give you an example of what you can do with these in terms of burnishing dry transfers over a larger area. This was a project I did a while back. That ends my tip. Oh, by the way, the lettering is Woodland Scenic's dry transfer alphabet and on a AccuRail data only.
That's a neat tip. Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Well, now I'd like to go to our special segments this evening. The first one is Rick and Maureen Hunter and their wrap up of their build along of their Hunterline kit, the 30-foot King Truss Bridge. So Rick, thank you so very much for doing it.
Jim. Hi, Jim. Hi, everybody. We don't have the little camera on tonight. We have the big camera, so you can see who we are. Welcome to our last segment. This is segment number 8. So we've been 8 weeks building this little kit. And, we've been sent some pictures from the participants. And it's great. Like, the guys are doing a really good job. So the pictures are going to be all put together by Jeremy on July 24th. And on July 24th, we're going to have our draw for our $50 gift certificate for any of our products. So I wanted to just quick show you. This is what Maureen built. Okay, that's a completed, finished product. And you will see on July 24th, all the other ones that we're building. Now, what we're doing tonight is if you have any questions about anything that Hunterline does or anything you want to ask us, we're hoping to get to shows again pretty soon, but our borders are still closed. The one that's in jeopardy for us is the National Narrow Gauge in Hickory. It's not looking good.
Well, let me ask you this: are you going to be on the digital show for the NMRA?
No, we're doing a pass on that one this time, just because we got a lot of other things on the go right now for the next month or so, and we're trying to gear up for the National Narrow Gauge, but we're not optimistic about it.
Well, that's two of the biggies. I'm really sorry to hear that for you because I know how important those are for you and how much you and Marie like to visit everybody and see old friends.
But the NMRA convention, we've done that for, our first one was in Toronto in 2003.
Yeah,
So we have done them every year except last year, but we've done them every year since then.
gotcha.
And we do make and takes at those too. So one of the make and takes we do take is the King Post Bridge.
Well, I hope that you all have enjoyed this. I know this is the first one that you've done like this, and I really do appreciate you taking the time and going to the trouble of putting on the various shows. Maureen, I've had 3 different emails asking me how to get you to commit to being a mentor for other people because they're so impressed with how you model and how you build that bridge.
Oh, that's nice. Thank
She's
you.
blushing, okay?
I actually do have 2 questions for you. Number
Okay.
1, are you going to potentially be doing one of your other bridges in the My Build situation? And then number 2, do you have any other bridge type of products that you're potentially considering bringing out in the next year and a half?
Well, good questions. We probably would like to do another one. We're kind of throwing some ideas around right now. One of the ideas that we have done for the NMRA again, just locally here for Western Ontario division, is our trestle, and that's going to be. I haven't figured out the timeline yet, but that's going to be another 7 or 8. But there's going to be a lot of homework with it, and we have found that when we give this to NMRA guys, they don't want to build it straight. They want to build it on the curve while we're here to help them out. So that's a possibility coming up. What's new on the board? We come out with a new color. It's not on the market yet. It's called tan. And it's one of those colors that, if you remember, we did a segment a while ago on coloring ties. Prefab ties like flex track and all that stuff. Well, this is one of those colors that works really well. It's one of our pigment ones. It's new. We haven't even started producing it yet. We've done our initial batch of it just to try it. Something else that we're working on is, and I've told Jim this before, is we're trying to work on a stockyard. With everything else going on, we haven't had much time to sit down and do it. I've got some preliminary drawings and stuff done and got some of our ideas together, but it's got to be good. Like, I just don't want a stockyard. I want a stockyard. So
You're eagerly,
that's one of the things coming.
eagerly waiting that one.
Yeah.
Well, listen, anytime you and Maureen want to come back and do the trestle, you're most welcome. Just let me have some dates and I'll make sure that you're scheduled in.
Okay, that's great. We have had a great time doing this, okay? Just the feedback that we're getting back and how we create, get somebody new at it to get their confidence going for bridges and for wood. Wood can be very intimidating, especially as somebody new in the hobby. So that's what we try and do is get that confidence building. So yeah, there's the fact that now that everybody's done this, now they're going to get a bigger one and do one of the big kits, okay? But like Clark says, we like giving back. And if we can help somebody get a project done, then that's what we do.
Well, I know that some of the people that are building along with the bridge, I know you've given them confidence. And that to me, that's one of the critical parts of successful modeling for anybody. If they start with the feeling that they can do it, that they can build that model, they may make a mistake here or a mistake there, but they'll correct that because they know they can do it. And if you can get that confidence in people, they can build anything.
Exactly, exactly. And that's one of the big points is to have that confidence to go on to bigger and better things.
And I guarantee you, from what the feedback that I'm getting, Maureen sure did that. It was great to have you there, Rick. I mean, you helped out giving the prototype information and so forth. But when it came down to the modeling, Maria is the one that they all talk to me about and say, boy, she really is a talented lady. She really knows how to build models.
And that's good. Like Maureen has many talents in many different areas. We have little side businesses on the go too here and there that are completely different from model railroading, but it's she's very artistic, okay, and she knows how to put it down. You're
I have a
welcome.
question for you. I have a question for you. You have a website, don't you,
Sure.
Rick? Yeah, are all your stains and that on the website and all your model kits? Yeah,
Yes,
your model kits
it's
as
easy.
well.
It's hunterline.com. It's
Okay.
hunterline.com. It's as easy as you can get. All our weathering mix is on there. All our kits are on there. We last Sunday we launched our new website, so we have a couple bugs right now that we're trying to get rid of.
Sure.
But yeah, it's people use the website all the time, even to get just ideas. Never mind purchasing, but just to get ideas, because we have a few videos on there and so on, and we want to do a lot more videos. Just segments like 30 seconds long, 45 seconds long, 2 minutes long.
Oh yeah.
We
They're
want to do a
good.
lot of those coming up.
Yeah. I'm not far away from you. I'm over in Mississauga and you're in Cambridge, so we'll see you at
There
some
you go.
meetings. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Wow,
Rick,
they keep canceling.
Rick, those short segments that you're talking about,
Yes.
that's why we started the quick tips.
Yep.
Paul Thompson told us that he went to a lot of train shows, and it was amazing how giving somebody a 1 minute quick tip really could make a lot of difference to them, because it would help them think about things that they've never thought about before. So if you would consider it, if you'd like to do it, I'll start a segment on our show for your quick tips, the same as I do for Paul and Ted, because I think I know that Paul and Ted are getting viewers watching the show for their quick tips, because when we break the segments down, then we can see how many people are simply watching that particular segment of the show for the quick tips, and it's been growing. So I know that it's important to people, and the different kind of things that they talk about, something almost different every show, is something different as far as modeling, and a tip that they can use, in whatever modeling they're doing. So if you and Maureen would like to do that, I'll be glad to talk to you about trying to set up a time and so forth when you all could do your quick tips that are. We started with Paul and I said, well, we'll do them for 60 seconds. We'll try a 60-second quick tip. Well, that we've gone past that a little bit, but they're short segments. We don't try to make these, minutes and minutes and minutes. They're quick tips. They're little bits of information that can help a modeler build.
Yeah, like all the techniques and methods that we've just done in the last 8 weeks only pertain to the king post. When you get into a trestle, that's a whole nother ball of wax, and you get into the big house, that's another ball of wax.
And that's what I would say. We could call it bridge tips or something, perhaps. I don't know. Whatever you all would like to name it would be fine with me. But if you'd like to do it, I'd really love to do a segment like that on the show.
Absolutely. I think maybe we could be best probably in the fall sometime.
That's fine.
Like our summer is kind of taken up with family and so on, especially since now we can go see them.
I know you and Clark are family and fishing. I understand. So it takes the fall for you all to get back into model railroading.
But we can't go down to the U.S. to see our family down there.
Anybody have any?
I don't know what to go about it.
Anybody have any more questions for Rick or Maureen?
Yeah, I have a question. I know with the Queen Post, you have it where there's an option for a covered bridge. Now, that they did the same thing with King Posts or no?
No, the covered bridge is a separate kit altogether, okay? And that's one of the few kits that we actually have a kit for standard and a kit for narrow gauge, because it's drastically different, okay, when you get to a covered bridge because of the height clearances and the width clearances. So that's two. Now, the Queen Post covered bridge is it was very, very common in the early 1800s, and they quickly disappeared and became Howe Truss covered bridges or Warren Truss covered bridges or any of the other bigger guys, okay? But I've mentioned this a couple months ago on this show that we cannot find a prototypical Queen Post covered bridge for trains. And all I can think of is this was before the age of photography. And I've got lots of Queen Post road covered bridges, but not the train covered bridges. And I know they made them because they're in books and texts, but no pictures.
So with the covered bridges, you say you got the narrow gauge and standard gauge. So if somebody wanted something that was broad gauge, I would assume you can't use the standard gauge, or do you have
Well,
to like design a whole new thing?
it depends on the clearances. Like everything that we classify for narrow gauge and standard gauge are because of the NMRA specs on what the clearances are. So all of our kits are based off that. Now for the broad gauge, that's going a little bit over. Even the narrow gauge, a lot of our stuff is great for narrow gauge unless, and there's always a but, and that's if the big K units are being used. If the big K units are being used, the widest point is the cylinders from the left cylinder to the right cylinder, and those clearances go out the window. Like we've preached for many years now about using our S scale for OM30 because the NMRA specs are the same. So, okay, we coined the phrase spindlier. So the S scale is a spindlier version of OM30. But if you use K units, they won't fit. So you have to go back to a standard gauge. But our kits are based on you do most of the cutting. So our thought there is if it's an absolute definite measurement, we cut it. Any chance of it being a variable, you cut it. And what I mean about that, our trestles, the only part that's cut to length in a trestle are the ties, because that's a given. But you might want to make it longer. You might want to make it longer and higher or on a curve. So if you pre-cut all that, you don't have those options.
All
So we
right.
try and build that into our kit. That there's different ways of doing them.
Yeah. We got a question from YouTube. Basically, what scales are available for I guess bridges and all, and etc. They were specifically asking about N scale. They were specifically asking about N scale, but if I remember correctly, you have more than just HO and N.
Yeah, we have N scale, HO, S, and O, and all very accurately scaled. And then those like the King Post, you can do it in a narrow gauge version, or the covered bridge, it's a different kit. But the thing about N scale is it's true N scale. It's not a small HO. So yes, our N scale kits are deadly accurate for N scale. And it's all on the website.
Rick, Marie, thank you so very much for being here tonight. We really do appreciate it. And for all your time and trouble and and frustration, I'm
It's no
sure.
trouble. It's no trouble.
But I really do appreciate you being on the show as many times as you have been, and looking forward to you coming back. And I'll be talking to you about the quick bridge tips. Now I'd like to turn to David Woodhead, who's doing a Watch Me Build segment for us of a Don Winters steam-powered cement mixer kit in O-scale.
Yeah,
So Dave, I really appreciate you being here this evening, and welcome.
happy to be here, and thanks for putting all this together, you team. It's quite an amazing endeavor. I really wish you all the best. Okay, I guess I can go ahead and share my screen. Everybody ready for that? Let's see, here we go.
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to do a slideshow. I'm looking at this in slideshow, so that means that I can't see the chat. But if anybody wants to interrupt me with a reasonable question, I'm very happy to answer it, or put it in the chat window, and we can get to it when I'm finished. This is not a very long presentation anyway. But so this kit, I encountered this quite a while ago, and I had this sketch, which is from the instructions, much enlarged. I had this up on my wall for years, up on my bulletin board, and it's just the most fanciful thing to imagine, a steam-powered cement mixer. It's like something out of the Wild, Wild, Wild West movie, where they had that steam-powered wheelchair and all that kind of stuff. But no, they really did exist. This design is probably from about the 1920s. It originally, I'll jump right ahead. This is my model, just to give you an idea of what we're working towards here. This is the finished product. But it went back to a 1980 article by Mick Greenberg and Gary Nash, or one or the other, or they often operated as a team, writing articles for the Narrow Gauge and Shortline Gazette on vehicles and rather extreme weathering for the time. This is 1980. And they were doing peeling paint and rust effects way before anybody else really achieved this kind of quality of work. Well, I mean, there were others, I guess, but they really set the example for so many people, and it was quite an inspiration. So this is the cover, and they had an article in the magazine. Now, shortly afterwards, Don Winter, who is, I think, basically just a basement operator, came out with his kit based on this. This model in the magazine was put together of all kinds of parts, like he was using, brake wheels from a smaller scale for something. He'd get the actual boiler from one kit, like a Hetchy steam yarder kit or something like that. And it was just bits and pieces. This is, which is something these guys were really good at. Here's the instructions for the Don Winter kit. And I must say they're a little sketchy. Like there's really not a lot of information, and the things don't really fit together. I had to cobble a few things that were an unexpected fit. But this is what you get. There's the picture of what's on the end of the box. This is from the early 80s, and those are the instructions. So after I did find my kit at the 2016 National Narrow Gauge Convention in Augusta, Maine, which was fantastic. And almost as soon as I walked in and I was setting up a display, and the guy on the next table had a couple of kits for sale, and one of them was the cement mixer. So in a way, I found my very small holy grail. And I was really looking forward to putting this together. So I went online and looking for steam-powered cement mixers and various kinds. And they all look different. Like I didn't find any that looked like the Mick Greenberg and Gary Nash or the Don Winter kit. But this gives you some of the range of options here in terms of the way things are put together. But basically, let's see if we can see my cursor here. Here we go. This is a Buddy L model. This is like a floor pull toy kit, probably from anywhere from the 30s to the 50s. But it gives you an idea of how these things work. And so basically you put your materials in, all the sand and lime and stuff into this hopper, which this gets pulled up and all this stuff is dumped into the rotating barrel, which is rotated by this steam cylinder here, and powered, of course, by steam. So, and then the other side, it's exemplified over here. This is one that's in by the roadside in Port Colborne, Ontario. And so this is the dump out side. This is when you've finished your mix, it gets dumped into buckets or whatever you're going to use over here. So this is the kit going together. A lot of it is this kind of ABS, I think, plastic or styrene, similar to Plastruct, if you've ever worked with Plastruct styrene. There's a few transparent parts, which I found kind of interesting, like the barrel is actually a transparent tube. I guess it's whatever they had, whatever Don Winter had access to provide a material. And then there's various cast parts. The wheels are metal. The ends of the barrel are plastic, and a lot of these little fittings here are either white metal or plastic. So this is before I spray painted, and you can sort of see how I've had to cobble together some of the things that didn't quite fit, like this platform here and over here had to be raised up so it would clear the barrel, because there's going to be pieces going across on top. So for whatever reason, the instructions were hardened. Oh, you can see some wood parts in here. I put those in too. Same kind of reason, to make everything clear, the rotating barrel. But really a fascinating little piece of machinery. And so I'm putting over on the text here the materials I've used. And one of my mandates in putting this together was really to, and what I think of as animating the surface, animating the model. So it's not all one color, even though some of the other examples in the color pictures are primarily one color. There's all kinds of subtle variations and things that I really wanted to bring out. So I started with, after this was all put together, I sprayed the whole thing with, this is a paint I really like. It's like an art supply store spray paint called Montana Gold. Concrete is like a warm black. I get hit tending toward the reds as opposed to the cold blues. And to me, a dark iron, that's one of my favorite paints. It's like, it's not really gray. It's sort of slightly metallic, but it's just got a very good overall off black. And I use Gorilla CA for just about everything, almost everything, including wood to wood. Here's a really cool find that I used here. This stuff, well, two things actually here. The platform is a piece of brass shim cut to size, and then covered with, up here we get Astro yogurt in ferret, it's just a round container. And on the top of the container is this really neatly textured sort of aluminum foil kind of stuff. So that texture is actually from the yogurt foil. So you peel the foil off without crumpling it and put it aside, and then you can eat your yogurt. But I have quite a stash of these now because I've been eating the same yogurt for years. Now on that, I put this brand name, Modern Masters, 2-part iron paint and rust activator. So basically you slop on, it's a fairly thick iron paint. It's black. And it looks kind of cool by itself because it's really, it gives a texture all its own, but in this case, I'm trying to go for that yogurt foil texture. And then after that's dried, only 10 or 20 minutes, you apply the second, the rust activator, which turns it mottly, unpredictable, rusty, yellow to orange color, which is really neat. Every time I've used it, I get a different result, which I think is great. It's sort of like raku pottery or something. You don't really know what you're going to get when you pull a piece of raku out of the kiln until you actually are finished. So you just apply this stuff and you say, oh, wow, that looks great. And in a way, I wish I didn't have to put other machinery on this platform because I thought it looked so neat. For a lot of the other paints I'm using, this is fairly roughly painted. These are just basically dollar store paints, or you can get them at artist supplies. Americana, they're like $1, $2, $3 a container. Ceramcoat, you don't need to always use expensive hobby paints where you don't need to. I mean, there's certainly, you can use a wide variety. Another art supply thing here is a line of acrylic inks. And I used dilute, the brand name is FW ink. And the kind that I used is Sienna Nature. That's just my general wash that I can put on stuff. Whoops. Okay, whoops. I'm going ahead here. Okay, I'm not ready for this. Oh, it's my mouse. Okay, sorry. There, that. Okay, got this. Okay, the other thing is blacken it. There are all kinds of other substances that you can use, like Jack's Industries makes some really good blacken it and a brown solution. I also have the a gunmetal or a gun bluing that I just got from Canadian Tire, like a hardware supply that carries sporting goods. And gun bluing is really good. Often if I have a project, I'll try to darken the metal parts in any of these things. I'll just try one or the other until I get something that I like, and then I'll finish the project in that one. In this case, blacken it really did the trick. And it doesn't have to be super soaked in it. Sometimes, as I'm saying, a light treatment gives a good galvanized look. It doesn't have to be completely black. I like the idea of bringing out the metalness of metal parts, such as these pulleys. I'm using, there's another, oh, that's polyscale dark green. As you see, I wanted to use a different green on the steam cylinder here. That's the vertical. So I'm not quite finished here. You can see I haven't done the rigging yet. The rigging took me forever to figure out how these chains all worked to haul up the input thing there. Let's see, what else am I saying here? The boiler is not the original boiler. Whoops, see, that's my mouse. There we go. The boiler is from another resin kit. The boiler that came with the model, the Dawn Winter model, I felt was a little small and inconsequential. It might be correct, it might not be correct, who knows. But anyway, I had this other one that I used. And something that I did here, you can see on top of the boiler, I used a very thin walled, in fact, I wrapped a brass tubing with a thinner piece of brass to give that really small effect here, to make it look really skinny and kind of random and, you know, cobbled together by the local blacksmith. You can see some of the other colors that I'm using here. This water tank, which is used for, and this hose here, that's used for washing out the cement mixer in between loads. That is, to me, a gunmetal color, which I really like. And you can see some of the other effects. There's a different kind of rust there. I think I tell you what that is in the next picture. Yep. Let's see. Okay, this is the finished one from the other side. This is the output side. And the first thing I say here is the handles for the chutes. I mean these things here. Now that's just a piece of wire bent. I probably used piano wire, like steel wire. And I used a bit of insulation from another wire and fed that on there to look like a handle, so that somebody would grab this handle and tilt it up when this thing is not in use. This one thing I really enjoyed texturing was this cement goop here, and this and on the other side, I used a Liquitex flexible modeling paste. Golden, that's another brand name. Coarse pumice gel, which is sort of like a coarse sand right in the acrylic. And rotten stone color, which is rotten stone. I think we might have talked about that before. And fine sifted sand. I use that. A lot of this, my scenery is actually fine sifted sand. The drive belt on the other side. Oh yeah, that's this thing here. That's actually a very fine sandpaper. K&S has made a really nice sandpaper assortment. And some of them almost don't look like sandpaper at all. They're just barely textured, but nice for something like a drive belt like that. So here's more of this goop here. You can see the modeling paste kind of stuff there. And that's about it. You can see that I'm using different colors of rust. And I think that really helps to bring things out. You know, like there's several probably at least 3 different kinds of rust treatment there. I probably used some Bragdon powder. I used sort of a burnt sienna or raw sienna kinds of colors, either in powder or paint. But you can get an idea from this picture just what I was going for in terms of what I was talking about. My theme was the animation of the model through using different techniques, different textures and different colors. And this thing, mind you, this is about 4 inches wide, even in O scale. It's not a very big thing. You can see the guys there behind it. Yeah, there we go. I think that's the last one. That is the last one. Okay, I am open for questions. I will.
I think that's a beautiful model.
Thank you.
Absolutely outstanding.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very happy with that. I wish my whole layout looked like that.
Are you going to do another one of these next week?
No, mine. You have me in October.
October. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
That's right. I mean, I'm open to doing more, but anyway, it's up to your scheduling. I'm at your mercy.
I got it. Well, David, I appreciate you being here this evening. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, your featured modeler tonight is me.
Right.
I like to build in brass. And a couple of you have said, well, you keep talking about that. We'd like to see what you build in brass. We'd like to see you talk about how you build in brass. We'd like to be able to build in brass, but we don't have the faintest idea how to start. Well, I'm going to try to tell you best I know how. And I have to apologize on the front end. I was going to do this in my shop, but my shop is in a separate building on our property. And when I go out there, I can't really get the internet very well. So it just doesn't work. I mean, it comes and goes, and I can't depend on it. And particularly with the storms that we have down here and that we have coming in right now, I was just scared to even try to go out there and do it out there. So I apologize about that, but I'll try to walk you through at least the kind of things that I use and how I decide to use a tool. Why do I like to build in brass? I have 3 things that I build in. Brass is my number 1 choice. Basswood is number 2, and card is number 3. If I don't have to, I will never use plastic. That's just my choice. I just can't seem to do it right. I can't seem to find the right glue that I need. Everything I've ever tried to build in plastic has turned out to be a mess. So I've just given up on that medium as far as building in. Well, brass is my favorite. That's what I learned from my mentor. My mentor worked for General Motors in their model making department. He was about 85 when I met him. I used to go over and spend hour after hour at his home watching him build in brass and trying to pick up the tips from him about how to do it. And I never will forget that man. He was so helpful to me. So what tools do I use? I use a Dremel. The primary thing that I use the Dremel for is I put a cutting wheel in it. And that's basically the only kind of piece of options that I use the Dremel for. I use it both for sanding and I use it for cutting into brass. But I go through a lot of the cutting wheels. I break a lot of the cutting wheels. But that's the main use that I use the Dremel for. I've got a bench grinder and polisher, and I also use it as a sander. Use it very rarely. I've got an old Unimac lathe. This was a lathe where it was a lathe and then you took it apart and you put some other pieces with it and it became a milling machine. I've had it for 30 years. I bought it from my mentor. No telling how many years he had it. He started out with it when they first came out, and I can't even give you a date on it. But I've still got it. I still use it. I don't use the milling machine part. I use the lathe part. I've got a drill press. I got it from Micromart. Most of the tools that I buy, they come from Micromart. an exception is I have an American Beauty resistant soldering unit. I didn't buy it. When we lived near Detroit, the American Beauty soldering company was downtown Detroit, the headquarters was. And I called them up and said, I write articles for O-Scale magazine. At that point, it was 48-foot O-Scale News. It's since gone out of business. And I said, I'd like to write an article about your company and about your soldering unit. So they said, fine, well, we'd love for you to do that. So I called a friend of mine that worked for General Motors in their photography department. And he went with me and took my pictures, so forth, of what we were doing. And we were there probably 2 or 3 hours. And at the end of it, the marketing director said, you know, we'd like to give this to you, but we have a company policy. We can't give this to anybody. I said, I understand, no problem. He said, so what we decided to do is we're going to loan it to you. And we'll give you a call when we want it back. That's been about 32 years ago now. That's how I got my American Beauty resistant soldering unit. I use it. I've lent it to other people's because they wanted to try it and see if they liked it before they spent the kind of money that American Beauty charges for one. I've let, when we first moved to Florida, the region asked me to be the contest chairman and the achievement program chairman of the region. And I noticed that nobody was entering the contest with any kind of brass models. So I said, well, you can borrow my resistant soldering unit for a year if you'll, for the person that has the best model as judged in the contest that has some element of it made out of brass. So all of a sudden we had 5 people enter brass models in the contest. And I was really happy about that. Took a year for me to get it back. But I think it was worth it, at least to me it was. I've got a Micromart variable speed, variable temperature soldering unit. I've also got a Weller professional variable temperature soldering unit. I use the Weber probably 95% of the time. I have what I call a flamethrower. It throws out a flame. It's run with cigarette lighter fluid. I use it very rarely, primarily only if I'm using thicker brass than I normally do. Something over 15 thousandths, over 20 thousandths thick, that kind of thing. Lots of files, all different shapes, all different kinds. Drill bits, probably 4, probably 90% of the time. I buy those, you know, in the little containers that Micromart sells. I think they sell them for 10 of them in a container. Scissors, I use 3 kinds. Large scissors, which I consider to be the regular scissor set that you've seen. A medium scissor and a small set of scissors, which is just sharp as it can be. I use a lot of X-Acto 11 blades. I buy them in bulk by the thousand. And I go through a bunch of X-Acto blades each day. I have a nibbler cutter that I got from Micromart. I use it, but not on the very small brass piece. 5 thousandths, something like that. I won't use the nibbler. I've got 2 sets of 1, 2, 3 blocks. I've got 2 sets of small metal angles. And I've got a friend of mine gave me a metallic table with magnets in it. So it's a metal table with magnets that I can get right corners and different shapes out of. I use a tremendous amount of clothespins. I turn them around and convert them to what I can call alligator clips. And then I'll normally cut them at the end so that they're very narrow and serve a specific purpose for me. I'll normally burn them very badly, however I'm using them when I do my soldering. And I end up probably throwing them away. So I go through it a lot of just those wooden little clothespins. Jigs, if I need more than 2 of the same parts, first thing I'll try to do is make a jig for it out of wood, and then keep it, and hopefully I've got it labeled somehow so I know what it is in the future. Other kind of tools I use are probably your standard modeling tools that probably all of you have. But the ones that I've outlined to you are the tools maybe that I use the most in my brass modeling. For solder, I use 60-40 rosin core solder, 60% tin, 40% lead. I also use 50-50 solder, the rosin core, which is 50% tin and 50% lead. It used to be called, or you may have heard it called body putty, because you can actually sculpt with it. I use it to fill in imperfections in a model, the seams or how different pieces of brass come together. I'll fill that in with the body putty rather than the 60-40 normal solder that I use. I have one model that I'll show you how the sculpting that you can do with the 50-50 solder. I use rosin core flux paste, use a lot of it. Probably too much. Everybody laughs when they see me use the paste because I really do slop it on. I want that solder to flow. I use a high temperature. That's why I like the Weller resistor, Weller soldering iron. And I use an awful lot of the flux to make sure that it's going to flow. Brass, I use primarily K&S 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 sheets, and all different kind of shapes that they produce. The shapes start at 1/32 up to 1/4 of an inch. Normally, those are the shapes and those are the sizes of shapes that I'll use. Can't hardly get the 1/32 anymore. The lady from California that we had in Meetup was kind enough to get me a lot of 1/32 from different hobby shops around the country that had not yet sold out of the last stock that K&S produced for them. But now K&S doesn't produce 1/32 anymore. And I'm looking for another source because it's a lot of trouble to try to make your own 1/32 brass shapes. So those are the tools. Those are the kind of soldering things that I use. How I build, I start with either a photo, a plan that somebody has sent me or I find, or an idea. I don't buy kits. I buy pieces of brass, I buy solder, I buy flux, I buy tools, and I build. Photos are the easiest thing to probably come by. If I've got an idea that I'd like to try to find and build, then I go on the internet and see if I can find a photo. People send me photos all the time and say, why don't you try to build this? I use some of those. People send me plans. It doesn't matter what scale it's in, because I've got to scale the photo. I've got to scale the idea, whatever I'm using, I have to scale anyway. I scale and draw it to scale. I'm not an excellent draftsman or anything like that. I have no training for it. I just try to find wheelbases. I try to find lengths. I try to find widths. I try to decide the size of wheels, size of doors, anything that I can find on the photo, anything that I can find on a plan, then I'll try to scale it from that. And I probably go through 2 or 3 drawings before I find one that comes, reasonably close to the scale that I'm modeling in. And then I'll try to perfect that one. I model in both S and O. Why? Because I write articles for both the S scale resource and O scale resource online magazines. So some of the projects that I do are in S scale. Most of the projects that I do are O scale. I used to build in HO, but I just don't have the eyesight for it anymore. Then I transfer those drawings. Once I've made them, I'll come in and print another copy out on my printer. And then I'll cut that out and paste it on a piece of brass, whatever size brass I'm going to use. For many of them, I start out using 5,000 brass. It's just paper thin. It's if you can build a card model, you can build a brass model out of 5,000 brass. I use number 11th X-Acto blades to cut out door and window openings in that brass. Maybe that's why I go through so many blades. But the same as I do the card models. So the brass to me is just not that much of a problem to build from. Now, I don't build steam locomotives. I build trolleys. I build a lot of different things, but I'm not a steam locomotive brass builder. So consequently, I don't have a lot of problems that a steam locomotive would create for me if I had to try to build one of those in brass. So I cut out my brass pieces, scissors, number 11 blade, or the nibbler. Just depends on how thick it is and how close to the tolerance I want to try to get it to cut out. And then I file it. Got to get it square. Got to be able to make sure that it's either square or it's to the angle that it's supposed to be. That's just critical. And it's one piece at a time. You don't try to solder them together and then get them straight and then get them square. Each piece has to be what you want before you solder it. And once I get that, then I check it and recheck it. It's like you check twice and cut once. It's that important to make sure that the angle that you have, that the squareness of the piece that you have is as accurate as you can get it before you attach it to anything else. I always start at the floor. I build in down. I build the base. And then I stop building. I put the base away. Once I have the floor and the base built, then I put that away. And I start building up, which means the sides and in. That done, I set that aside. And then I build the roof. And then once I've got those built, then I attach them together in a way that I can always take them easily apart again. Then, when I'm satisfied that I've got the elements completed, then I worry about a power source. I normally will use Northwest Shortline magic carpets or an underbody kind of power unit source. So I don't have to cut holes in the floor. I normally, for the interior, I have boxes that I build and just slip them inside the body of the car. So I can take those out if I want to and redo those in the future. So my models come in pieces, but I always build down first and then build up. Probably don't have to do it that way. That's just how I learned. That's just how it's easy for me to do. Once I've got that done, then I need to clean it. And I use lacquer thinner. Have a bowl that I pour it in, and then I put the model in it in pieces, not as a whole model, but each piece in there. It's the first time I've tried to clean any of the pieces. And I put them in there for probably 15 minutes. And then I've got a brush, a soft brush that I use, and I put the lacquer thinner on each one of the parts and brush it around and make sure it's in all the crevices and everything. Take it out of the lacquer thinner and just let it dry overnight. That cleans my model for me. And it also gives me a base for the paint. Paint comes next. I'll normally paint it before I put it back together. Once I've got it painted, put it back together, test run it, make sure that it's going to have power and so forth. Then I'll worry about the weathering and whatever other thing I'm going to do. Details for it, I either buy them in brass or I make them. It just depends on how hard it would be to make the part versus precision scale cost. I try to create each model as a scene. I want it to be something unusual, something different, something that I hope people, when they see it on my model railroad, they'll want to stop and just see that for a minute. So now let me try to show you some of the models that I build and talk about those a little bit, and we'll go from there. So John, if you put up the first slide. Cleaver Models has a CD where on this CD in O scale, they have all of these different kind of critters. Well, this is a picture of all of their card critters and the building that they have on their CD from the Cleaver Company. So I got their CD and I built all of the critters and so forth that they had on their CD. Next. Well, I decided I wanted to build one in brass. So I printed another copy out of one of their critters and I pasted it on 5,000 brass, K&S brass. Next, John. And there is their critter, cardstock critter on the right, and then my model of it in brass on the left. And it's all based on using the plans that came in that CD from Cleaver in cardstock and transferring that to 5,000 thick brass, cutting it out and soldering it together. That to me is it was no harder to do it in brass than it was to do it in card. And those are my models, both in brass and card, from that CD that Cleaver produced. Next. About 2 years ago, I decided that I needed automobiles for my layout. And I was in O scale, and I really didn't find some of the 1920s, 1930 cars that I wanted. So I found this picture of a Bugatti, a 1930 Bugatti sports car. And I thought that looked pretty good and something that you probably won't see on many layouts. So I decided that I would build that in brass. And it's brass except for the wheels. The wheels are all card. And they're individual pieces of card that are cut out in circles and glued together to the proper thickness for an O-scale wheel from the 1930s. And I found the wire wheel simulation print from Tin Soldier. Tin Soldier has a car from the 1930s, a Packard, and I got that, and I used their drawing, and I keep printing it out all the time. But that is the wheels that's how I made the wheels that I use on that Bugatti. The rest of the Bugatti is all brass. Next. This is a 1930s Duesenberg. You may notice the wheels, they're the same thing. They're all card. The rest of the car is all brass. The stripes that you see on it and that kind of thing, that's card, because I'm not that good a painter where I can make those kind of lines that straight with my eyesight. But that is a Duesenberg. That's what they used to call in the 30s. That's how we got the sound. It's a doozy. Well, there it is. Next. I spent some time in Texas, so I had my Duesenberg owned by a Texas cattleman. Next. That's another Duesenberg. This is a blue convertible. That's the picture of it that I found. I took the picture. You may notice you've seen the tires before. And I used the photo, scaled the photos to O scale, and that's how my model came out. It's brass. The strap across the hood is card. Again, I just can't paint that carefully. Next. This is a 25-ton GE switcher. The reason it has a trolley pole on it is because I'm a trolley model. People say, well, that GE switcher didn't have a trolley pole on it. I say, I know, but mine needed it because that's how I control my signals. If you notice the bird landing on the front of it, the body of that bird is 50-50 solder that I use to craft the body for that bird. The wings are 5,000th brass. The legs and so forth are wire. The tail is 5,000 brass. I made this about 34 years ago. I found a Canadian modeler who had done some etching, and I found he had some etched parts for the body of a switcher like this. So I called him up, and he sent me the etched parts for the body, and the rest of it, I took his etched parts, and the rest of it I scratch built. It's got two Northwest Short Line magic carpets, so all wheels are powered. The way that I run these, I run them off of overhead wire. So in a lot of ways, it's like having a three-rail model railroad, because both of my rails I wire together so that all the wheels that touch the rails are picking up power from the rails. And then my other source of power is my overhead. So my overhead wire, my pole is insulated from the rest of the trolley so that I get the power off of the overhead wire. So my overhead wire is critical as far as the electrical operation of my model railroad. The whole thing was built in 5,000 brass. The next. Well, I was writing an article, and I wanted to have the New Tracks International Critter Corporation. And I saw this sign, I said, that's got to be my headquarters sign. I really like that. Next. So that's my sign for the International Critter Corporation, and that's the building for it that my friend Paul Egret designed, and that's a card structure with the sign in brass, and all the lettering on the sign and so forth is all card. Next. This is a single truck trolley. It's powered under the body of the car. It's got steps on each end. Part of it is enclosed, part of it's open. I started this model from a photo that I found of a San Francisco trolley car. And instead of using the mechanism that they would have used, I put a trolley pole on the top of it, and that became my model of the single truck trolley. It also is in 5,000 brass. Next. I went to a meet here in Florida that was open to modelers of any scale and so forth. And they didn't have a contest. It was you bring your models and show them and so on. And they had a bunch of clinics there. So I went to this one clinic about trolleys. And this guy was showing photos of, during World War II, the manufacture of the big guns that were used on battleships and put on the western coast of the US and the eastern coast of the US as deterrence against Nazi invasion. This is my vision of a model transporting one of the big guns in the manufacturing plant that manufactured the big guns. And I use the pictures that I got by going to that clinic of one of the trolleys that the corporation had actually used to move the big guns around. Next. This came from another photo. Can't remember where I found the photo or anything, but I like the crane on the back of it. And I like the fact that that they had an awning on the front back of the cab so that you could come outside and get out of the sun by going under the awning. I eliminated the awning. I left the facility to have it, but I never put the awning on it. The floor of this one is 20,000 brass, and the rest of it is 5,000 brass, except for the crane. Then I built some of the boxes and put a figure or two on it, and that became my model. It's powered by Northwest Short Line magic carpet under the front trucks, and it is a heavy little car. Next. This either came, I think this was from a railroad model craftsman back in the 70s or 80s, late 70s, early 80s. A guy had built this model in HO, and he had done an article in the magazine. And I thought, it's a small little tank car. It's the smallest tank car that anybody ever used on a railroad. And I thought, oh, I got to have one of those. So the body of mine is made like you may remember building model airplanes, paper stick model airplanes. They had stringers, wood stringers down the fuselage, and then you cover them with paper, and that became the body of your airplane. Well, for my tank car, I cut 6 circles of 10 thousandths brass, and then I took 5,000 brass and covered those round corners that I had made, and in effect roll that 5,000 brass into the body of my tank car. It's soldered together on the bottom of it. You can't see the solder joint because it's underneath the car. The ends, I took 5,000 brass and made the ends by on my anvil by hitting them, starting in the center, and then just banging the heck out of them to all sides until I got them reasonably shaped like I thought the end should be. And then I cut out a circle and soldered it to the tank. The 2 lids and the top parts of the car, I went to a plumbing company and bought some plumbing pieces that plumbers use to screw on to stop the end of the flow from lines, plumbing lines. And I sanded them and grinded them and so forth, and used those for both of the tops of my car. And then I soldered them onto the brass body. It was a fun car to build, and it was a real challenge for me, but I would never have tried to build or even find out about it if it hadn't been for that guy building it in HO, if you can believe that, scratch building it in HO in brass and telling about it in his article. So I really owe him a great debt for that. Next. This is an open trolley. The seats are all etched parts. I made one and then took it to a friend of mine in Detroit, and he etched me all the rest of them. The backs are movable, so you can flip them. If the car is going north, you flip them one way, and then you can, if it goes south, you can flip them the other way. I put a lot of people in mine. I think there's one seat that's vacant that I can flip back and forth and show people how they actually work. And they work off of pins on each one of the posts that the pieces slide into. The roof, it was banged out on the anvil again to get the ends shaped properly. And the base of it again is 20 thousandths brass, and the rest of it is basically brass shapes. The top is all 5 thousandths brass. Next. I like wagons, and this is a beer wagon. I found plans for this model out of a magazine. Actually, it's a book. It's a publication, a pamphlet kind of publication. I forget who made it now or how I got my copy of it, but it had plans for all different kind of wagons in it. And I thought, well, geez, that beer wagon kind of cute. I haven't seen one of those around, so I'll try that. So I built mine out of brass. The wheels I bought the wheels from somewhere, and they're plastic. I don't remember where. Barrels are painted a little bit. The horses I bought, the man I bought, the rest of it, it's out of brass pieces. Next. This is a critter that Bill Davis was kind enough to send me plans for. He got them from some magazine. I have no idea where, but he sent me the plans, and I built mine in O scale. Dylan Lambert has a model of this that he built designed on his 3D printer and printed out, and Bill built one of his, and it's a beautiful, beautiful model. Mine is 5,000 brass, built from the plans that Bill was kind enough to send me. Next. This is a trolley that I wanted to build for a long time. It's from New England, and it's half baggage and half passenger. The roofs were beat out on the anvil. The windows I found, I can't remember where now, they're brass. So I use those, same for the doors. The rest of it is 10,000 brass. The whole interior is a lift out section, one for the people side and one for the baggage side. The decals from Stan Cedarleaf. He was kind enough to do those for me. Next. This is a critter from a photo. I'd never seen one like this. I thought it was kind of unusual because of the way the cab was structured with the window, the door, and then the space in the back of it. So I decided, well, I got to have one of those. So I used the photo and scaled it, and that's mine in brass. The louvers and so forth for the engine, they're etched parts in 5,000 brass. Next. This came from that photo, and it's from a country in the eastern part of the world. I think it came from Yugoslavia, but I'm not 100% sure of that. I liked it because of the round windows in the front and the open door. I've never seen anything like that, and I liked that they had the brace so that the person inside operating it could hang on. He had a brace that he could stand and hold to lean out the side of the trolley to talk to people or to see things. So it was different for me. It's a very small model. I used it. I built it because of the things that I just said. It's not a functioning engine for me right now. I haven't put a magic carpet in it. So the axles and the wheels for this are card. And after the card is, it's about 8 layers of cards per wheel. But after you get them layered and painted and weathered and put it in a place where people look at it as part of a rail scene, you don't want to notice the wheels at all. What you see is how different the trolley looks. So I do that if I'm not going to actually operate it. I'll build it in brass, but it just becomes part of a scene for me. Next. Friend of mine in California, C.J. Riley, built this, no telling how many years ago. It's a crew carrier for a railroad in California. And he was kind enough to send me the plan that he drew for it and several photos of the prototype. And I used his plans and his picture to scale it for me, and that became my model. Next. Well, this one, how you start a project, you get a plan, you get a photo, you get something. Well, this appealed to me because it was a critter. It was an articulated critter because it comes in 2 parts, and it's connected with the connections necessary to operate the critter from the part of the critter behind it. So that was fascinating to me. I wasn't sure how I was going to build it, but I just had to try. Next. So I scaled it. I printed out the piece of paper that I had drafted it on. And those are the bits and pieces of 5,000 brass that I cut out using the plan that I made. And once I had them cut out, the pieces of the lower part of it, that's the base, the floor and the base for each one of those units. And then the pieces to the top of that are one for the front part of the engine, and the other ones are for the rear part of the engine. Once I had the pieces of brass cut out and measured and so forth, and had that part of it done where I could lay them out, then I just had to solder them together. Next. The trucks that I used they're brass trucks from Leadville shops. They're modified to try to accommodate what's shown in the photo. I didn't plan to use this as a model that would run. I could, but I didn't build it for that. So it's it's got a precision scale detail brass bell, but the wheels are carved, and the doors on the front of it and the back part are again etched brass that I've had. When we left Detroit, I had my friend etched me a bunch of pieces of 5,000s brass, and I've been using it ever since, and that's been 30 years ago now, I guess. But that's how I built it. It's 5,000s brass with some brass detail parts on it, and the wheels are carved. Next. This, I found photos of a trolley from Portugal. Martin Breckville, in MMR, told me where it was located, in Rock Hill Trolley Museum in Pennsylvania. And he sent me some more photos that they had of this trolley in their museum. And I thought, oh, geez, I got to build that. I think that the detail in that is just, that's too good to pass up. And I've never seen a roof like that. I don't even know what those two boxes on the front above the kit, I don't even know what they're for. But geez, that's an unusual kind of model. So I got to build that. Next. So I drew the plans from that one picture until I got the other photos that Martin was kind enough to share with me. And I drew the plan again. And I started by cutting out the floor. The floor is 15,000 brass, so it's not going anywhere. I figured out how to make the drop sides because I found out that both of the sides dropped. Originally, the car was used to carry coal or fish from the port to local either markets or businesses downtown. So the sides had to be able to drop down. And I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to make those sides drop down. But I finally decided to incorporate basswood for the sides. I used cotter pins and reshaped them and put those over the basswood so that I had a round head at the top where it would go close to the floor, and I could bend the cotter pin at the bottom and then solder it on top of the basswood to make it fit well. And then I used 1/16 inch wire and slid it down the holes that I had then on top of the basswood. I slid some more cotter pins through right next to those cotter pins that were on the basswood side. And then I soldered the end of those cotter pins to the floor. And then I had a workable drop down side for each side of the car. Next. And my next problem was trying to figure out the top. I didn't really have a problem building the two little pieces at the end. I had to enlarge my car because I didn't have a single truck, and I was too cheap to buy one. So I made mine a two truck trolley based on the same concept or same design. But I'd never seen a top like that. So I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to get the top done and get it wired properly so I could insulate it from the rest of the trolley. So that was my next challenge. everything about the trolley that you see is brass at this point. Next. Well, once I figured out how to do the electrical part, then all I did was insulate the top by sliding a plastic piece of tubing down the brass tubing that I had there, and then have the plastic tubing stick up higher on top than the brass bit, and stick out a little lower on the bottom under the floor of the car than the bottom of the core normally would. The brass is soldered to the floor and to the top. And I drilled a hole through the floor so that I could slide the plastic pole down through it. And then the wire from the trolley pole on top simply goes down through the plastic rod and fastens down underneath the car, so that I got the power access correctly. So then I started adding junk to the floor. Took some old bits and pieces of rail, made some cans out of brass pieces, and some boxes out of brass pieces, and started trying to fill in the junk. Next. Well, the junk was looking pretty good, but I needed more. So I started trying to get the junk for the sides to make the different ropes and so forth that were going to be needed. And I just kept adding some junk. Next. Well, just more junk. I got it cleaned up. I got it painted. I got the junk back down. And I decided, well, I got to have some more stuff. So I just kept adding junk to it. I put some figures in it. Next. And then it started to get there. It started to look more like the trolley that I wanted to have. So I was really happy about how it was starting to turn out. The trolley pole is scratch built, the same as all the rest of the trolley, including most of the junk that you see. There's some fabric that I used, some figures that I used, some wire that I used for the rolls and that kind of thing. Next. This is my shop. I've got all different kind of tools, but the ones that I use the most, I pretty well tried to tell you about. The one thing, if you look at the right kind of top of it, you'll see the test unit that I have. I've had that for probably 40 years. It started out an old Lionel test unit, and I still use it. It runs AC, DC. I use it for continuity testing an awful lot because of how I run the trolleys from the overhead wire. But it has all different capabilities, electrical, that I can test my trolleys on before they ever leave the workbench for the railroad itself. The railroad is on the other side of the building, but that is basically that's my shop area. Next. Well, the little trolley that became the articulated trolley with the card wheels and messed with trucks and stand cedar leaf details and painted and some weathering attempted. There it is. Next. That's an indication of how I connected it. There's wires that go between the units, just like shown on the photos. It's connected with almost pin and link couplers, just like the photo shows. And then it's got the air hose underneath that you really can't see. The paint stripes on the front and the back, that's card that I painted and glued on because again, I can't paint that well. Next. As I say, I have built a lot of different things in brass. The arboretum, my wife wanted me to build. I got some photos from different places in England and built it out of brass. It's made out of plexiglass and brass bar stock that's soldered together so that the glass or the plexiglass slides between the two pieces of bar stock. And once I had the bars in place and the shape of the building done, then it was simply a matter of cutting the plexiglass and sliding it down the slots in between the two pieces of bar stock. It's a fairly large model. It's got a lot of details on the inside, different plants, that kind of thing. It's got a flooring covering that I went to a local rug company and got their samples, and they gave me all different kind of samples of different oriental carpets and this kind of thing. And I picked one and cut it out and used that for the floor of the building. So for me, building in brass, if I see it, I like it, chances are I can build it in brass. If I can't build it in brass, for sure I can build it in basswood, or I can build it in card. The mayor of the city is flying over it in his hot air balloon because it's election time and he needs to get some visibility. It's a card model. And that's it. That's how I build in brass. That is my medium of choice. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them for you.
Hey, Jim, all I can say is that's a big wow for me because I haven't really tried to build in brass. And I'd like to try it someday, but it's one thing I really haven't tried. So that's to see how much you've done and how good it is. That's really something else. That's really great. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, but it's really not as hard as you may think. I guess the hardest part is making sure that you use enough flux, because if you cut the pieces out correctly and you flux them correctly, using the solder is no big deal. It'll flow like gravy. It's magic the way it can work.
Thanks. Yeah.
Hey, I've got a question, Jim. There's a couple of places on some of your models, like the open side trolley, that had little curly gewgaws under the roof, little braces that are kind of decorative. What did you use for those? Did you make those up out of brass wire, or how did you do that? Yeah.
Yep. Made them out of brass wire, made a jig.
Yeah.
Bent them in the jig so that they all had consistency. And I made probably twice as many as I used because I was having trouble trying to get them to come out exactly how I'd hoped they'd come out. And then I used the best of the lot and just soldered them together.
Nice. Yeah, I like that detail. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Jim, I was wondering the figures on that first trolley that was open. Did you make those, or where did you get those?
You were coming and going, Fred. I'm assuming you're talking about the one from San Francisco.
Yes.
No, I bought the figures. I can't tell you where I bought them. They were they're not pewter. I think they may be lead. I mean, they're old figures. And they were not painted. I painted them. Hardest figure that I had to paint was the guy's pants, to get him in the striped pants. That was the hardest part of it because I'm just not that good at painting.
Well, they're really neat looking.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yep. And on that open Portugal car, the boxes on top of the cab part,
yeah,
I would guess those are resistor grids up there.
They may be. They may be. I've never seen anything like that before, and I just have no idea. Martin, next time he goes, he's supposed to try to get me some more information about that car. next time he goes to that museum, because he's a member. But I just, it was just such an unusual car. And to me, it was just, it's a scene by itself. You see that car going down the track, you're going to say, I want to follow that a little bit because look at that car.
It's a neat car. So they have a couple of, I think they have another car there, which is a passenger car from Portugal. Beautiful wood interior on it.
Yep. It's funny. For my interior, the thin pieces of cedar that come in cigar boxes.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I use for my interior. And then I stain it. And I use that for my roofs. When I make my cedar roofs, I cut out the little pieces of cedar from that thin cedar stock from cigar boxes. And it works well for me. I mean, it's tedious work, but what else do I have to do?
Yeah. Neat.
Jim, got a question here from Bob Ross on YouTube. How long does it take to get comfortable soldering brass stock so that one could get comfortably reasonable good results with it?
It's individual, and and let me tell you how I do it is probably, well, I know it's not the way that most people would do it. It's not, it may even be stupid, but here's how I do it. I use a high heat. I put solder on the end of the soldering iron. I never clean the soldering iron. I've never cleaned a soldering iron. I've got a little puddle of water on a cushion that I put the tip through occasionally. I'll run it through occasionally. But most of the time, if I'm out there for 6, 8, 10 hours, I never turn the soldering unit off, and I keep soldering. I put a little bit, I use, as I say, the 60-40 solder. I put a little bit on the tip of the soldering iron. I use a lot of flux, and then I touch that soldering iron to the 2 pieces of brass, and it's there. That's it. Normally, if I'm going to put a side, for example, and try to solder it to the floor, I will solder one end, a very little piece of one end. I'll take a dab of solder and solder right then and make sure that I have that side exactly where I want it at that point. And then I'll go down and do a little bit further down that piece with another little dip of solder. And when I'm close to getting it to the end, then I'll go back and I'll run that stream of solder down the whole side of that piece. By doing that, I know that by the time I'm ready to do that my side is flush with the bottom where I want it. I don't have any kinks in it. I don't have any curves or anything like that. It's straight. And then I feel comfortable that I can just go ahead and put some more flux on the whole side at the bottom and run a whole stream of solder down it. And running the whole stream of solder is I put some solder on the end of the iron and then just touch that to one of the other pieces of solder that's already been placed there, and then just move the soldering iron right on down the stretch of it. It's practice. It takes practice, no question. You're not going to be perfect the first time you do it. Second time you do it, gets better. Third time, better than that. Fourth time, better than that, so forth. It just takes trial and patience, like anything else.
Hey, Jim, have you ever used a torch?
Yeah, but I only use it, I use it very rarely, and normally anything under 15,000, I won't use one because I get too many problems with the brass. It heats it up so fast that if I'm using 10,000 or 5,000 brass, I'll never use a torch. If I get up to 15, 20,000, 20 and above, yeah, I'll use a torch occasionally. But most of the time, if I'm using those thicknesses, I'm using them for the bottom, for the floor of the car, because I want the weight down there. Otherwise, I'll use the 5 or 10 thousandths for the floor of the car, and I'm not worried about it.
I had a project one time, and I actually soldered a piece of, I don't know, it was probably about 20 thousandths brass that I had formed on top of an 1/8-inch thick brass plate.
Yeah.
And soldered like a champ, but I used a torch.
Oh, absolutely. You have to get the heat. You really do. I mean, you can talk about trying to do it with a soldering iron and so forth, but I've just never been successful, doing it. You have to use a torch, there's no question. Or if I want to anneal a piece, I'll use a torch on it, and then I'll dump it in the water and anneal it, so that I can bend it easier, or I can maneuver it easier on my anvil. But if I don't have to anneal it and it's not that thick, I'll never use a torch, because it just disfigures it. It's just not. I can't do it well enough. It doesn't serve a purpose for me. I feel more comfortable using the soldering iron.
Many years ago, there was a company named Brookstone. They used to be kind of like Micromark. They sold little parts and pieces and stuff. And I bought a micro torch and regulators from them. It's actually an oxyacetylene outfit, and it uses really fine tips. I mean, the smallest one is like, I think the orifice size in the tip is about 4/1000ths of an inch or something like that. I mean, it's absolutely tiny, but it's an actual oxyacetylene torch. You start the acetylene and turn the oxygen on, and you get a little cone that's about a 32nd of an inch long or so coming out the end of that torch. It's quite, I don't use it now, but it's a cool little tool.
But I tried to use the battery powered soldering iron that Micromark sells, and I wasn't successful with that at all. It took too long for me to get something soldered together. That's why I use a high heat. If I'm going to solder it, I want to solder. Let's get on with this. The Micromark variable speed that I have, the reason I bought it is it's lightweight, and I can easily move it around to make my overhead wire. Because I scratch build all my overhead trolley poles and everything. And I could just pick that up and put it on a piece of track and, use it wherever I needed it on the layout, and it was easy and so forth. The Weller one that I use at my workshop, that one's heavier, and I can really, 10, 15 thousandths brass, if I touch it with that iron, it's going to be hot quickly. And I can touch the pieces of metal that I want to solder with just a dab of metal on it. As long as I got enough flux down there, it's soldered, it's there.
Do you know what the wattage is on your Weller?
I do, but I can't tell you right now, and I just don't remember.
All right.
Hey, Jim.
But it's fairly, it's good enough for me.
It's probably about a 50 watt or something like that, because to get hot enough and heavier material.
Yeah, it gets hot quick.
Jim, can you speak to how you choose cardstock and how you actually work with it?
Cardstock?
Yeah.
I use 100-pound paper that I buy at the what do you call it? I forget what name, depot. What is it?
Office Depot?
Office Depot, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
So I use 100-pound paper, and that's what I print out on, and that's what I draw on and everything. Then if I make my wheels with that, I know I need 8 ply of that. So normally what I will do is I've got little circles thing, little plastic thing with all different size circles in it. So I draw out 4 of those, and then I'll take that and glue that 3 sheets of the 100-pound paper together, and let that set. And then I'll use my scissors to cut almost where I want that circle to be. And then I'll finish it up with an X-Acto knife, number 11th X-Acto knife, to get it round and to get it right on the lines that I wanted. Then I'll take 2 of those and that gives me 6 layers. If I need 8 layers, normally that's for the larger size of the tire, because the 6 layers normally is enough for the tread. So then I use 2 of the larger ones for the back of it, for the wheel. And then I use 2 ply of that 100 pound paper, and roll them into very thin round pieces, and that becomes my axle. And then I can glue that to the inside of the wheels, and that becomes my axle and my wheel. And then all I got to do is just fasten it to the car.
Well, nobody ever talks about, they just say, oh, use some cardstock. So it's nice to be able to get some guidance on that.
Well, there's all different kind of thicknesses, and it's up to you. The 100 pound for me goes through my printer, so I don't have a problem with that. And because I 2 layers of it is plenty for me if I'm building a structure. Because you glue 2 layers with white. I use white glue, and when I'm building in card, it's number 11 X-Acto, my metal ruler, and white glue, and basically that's all the tools I need, and I can build anything that Paul Egret can design for me. I did for S-Scale resource not too long ago. I built the New Tracks Motorcycle Club, and I found a guy in the Netherlands that specializes in making nothing but S-Scale motorcycles, all different kind, Harley, you name it, he made them. So I got a couple from him. I found 2 ladies. I can't remember. Cat's Paw. Cat's Paw makes all kinds of figures and bits and pieces and so forth. And I called them up and I said, I need a man and a woman motorcycle rider, because there were no S-Scale motorcycle riders produced. And they said, we'll do it for you. And I said, that's great. Here's my motorcycle. Let me give you the dimensions of it and so forth, and you'll know what, whether it's overscale for S or whatever it is. But this is what I got for motorcycles. I need 2 riders. So they made my riders. And then I had a friend in Spain that's been on the show that makes paper humans. And he made me a motorcycle rider. Plus, he made me the outfits for my motorcycle riders. He made me the blue jeans. He made me the shirts. He made me the patches. He made me the jacket, the cutoff jackets that motorcycle riders wear. He made me those. And then he made me the New Tracks patch for the back of my motorcycle riders. So now I had my house that Paul Egret had designed for me in card. I had the motorcycles, the riders, and the patch for the back of it. And I was in business. I had my New Tracks Motorcycle Club. Then I decided, well, I want a 1920s era playground. So I went on the internet and I found swing sets, slides, roundabouts, bars, all different kind of stuff that in the 1920s and 30s kids used on their playground. Probably today OSHA has outlawed a lot of them, but back then kids enjoyed them. So I made them in brass, and I didn't have kids. I couldn't find kids in O-scale to be on the slides or anything. So I went back on the internet, same pictures that I used as the basis for making the pieces of equipment had kids shown in it. So I rescaled that to where the kids were the O-scale kids. And then I found a putty that I could use to put over the pictures. And then I painted the putty kids that I had made, the same color clothes and so forth that the kids had on in the pictures, and sat them in the swings and put them on the bars and so forth. And that became my playground. So, it's, I do crazy stuff, but I do it in brass or card or basswood.
Jim,
Yes, sir.
how did you apply your window glass to the critters?
I use plastic pieces, and
Mhm.
it's you know how you buy a box and it's got a piece of plastic on top of it and sides of it and so
Yeah.
forth, and it's kind of thick plastic.
Mhm.
That's what I use.
So how do you attach it?
I glue it from the inside.
Oh, with crazy glue?
I cut it oversized and I glue it from the bottom. I only use the bottom for the glue so that I don't have to worry about getting glue anywhere close to the glass itself. If I need a half inch, for example, to cover the window, I'll cut it an inch to get it to all the way to the floor. And then I'll put glue on the bottom of it to where it's not even close to the window. And then that's the only fastening that I use for the glass on the inside.
I got a lot of ideas from that, Jim. I really appreciate that.
The other thing that I found, you see a lot of models, particularly the kind of stuff that I'm building, and it looks like they've got a very thin amount of insulation or rubber gasket or something around the window. You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
Well, what I do is I use florist wire, very thin florist wire, and I solder it around my openings for my windows only on the outside. So now I cut the window out and it's got rounded corners. And then I do that, I solder that around the outside. And then I take a black pin and I rub it on that after I've painted the whole car on that piece of wire on the outside that I soldered. And that becomes my insulation and my rubber gasket. And it looks exactly like the rubber gasket. If you look closely at some of the pictures that I showed you, you'll see it on the models. And it's a detail that you normally don't see anybody try to do, because I'm not sure anybody has thought about doing it that way. But I did it because I wanted to see if I could do it. And I tried 1/32 wire. It was just too thick, too big. And I tried some other stuff, but this florist wire is so easy to work with. It's so bendable. It's just, you touch it and it bends.
Mhm.
And trying to make it around, those little corners of the windows. I mean, you just rub your thumb around it and it's there. And so then you just put some flux down and run a solder line.
Thank you, Jim.
Sir.
Jim,
Jim? Oh, sorry. Okay.
go ahead.
I'll barge in. Okay. I've got a quick question. Can you tell us what you're using to clean the brass before you put your flux on and get to soldering?
Lacquer thinner.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Lacquer.
Yeah.
I know we're not supposed to use it. I know it's against every rule and so forth.
Yeah.
But I've used it for years and years and years, and I buy it by the metal cans,
Yeah. Yep.
And I then have a bowl that I pour it in there, and I put the model in there and just let it sit for a while.
Wow.
And then make sure that I've got it brushed into every cranny. And it does two things for me. It cleans it thoroughly. It really does. I mean, once I take that out and let it just air dry overnight, I'm comfortable that all that flux and all that fingerprints and everything else, it's gone. Now, I may have to do some filing left to make sure that certain things are just right and so forth. If I have to do a lot of that, then I'll dunk it back in the lacquer thinner again. But if it's just a little bit, chances are I'll paint it right then. I don't prime it. I paint it.
Right. So you don't blast it or sand it or anything like that?
No, I'm dealing with 5,000 brass.
Yeah.
This is like paper. This is like paper.
Yeah.
Somebody says, what thickness paper do you use? Well, 5,000 brass is like a piece of paper if you think about it. And being able to cut your window openings in brass with a number 11 X-Acto blade. I mean, how many people think that they can cut brass with that? Not many.
Yeah.
Well, I cut it all the time like that.
Neat. Great. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Jim,
Yes, sir.
Ted wants to know, and probably the rest of us, what's your source for the cigar boxes where you get your cedar for your interiors?
I went to a liquor store here in where I live. And I walked in and I said, listen, I'd like to have all of your throwaways from your cigar boxes. And they said, well, all we do is they're in the trash. And I said, well, I tell you what, here's a black sack. Instead of throwing them in the trash, if you'll throw them in my black sack, I'll be by once a week to pick it up and replace it. So that's how I get my boxes. So I get all the little pieces, the thin pieces, they're in there. But then I get all of the other pieces, the wood pieces and so forth. And those thicker pieces, you know, and it's like, I don't know, maybe 5x8, 6x9 sizes. I'll cut those up and use them for bracing for the inside of my structures, or I'll use them as bits and pieces for models and so forth. I was thinking about using a piece of cedar for the sides of that one trolley that I used the basswood for, but I decided on basswood because I had a thickness of basswood that I thought was just perfect for that source, and I had a long enough piece of it where it worked for both sides. But I use that that real cedar stuff an awful lot.
Good source for making wood shingles.
Oh, absolutely, and see, all of my structures, some of the structures you saw by the one that I was talking about building in brass and plexiglass, I put cedar shingles on most of the structures that I build, and it just takes time to cut them into the cedar sizes from those thin sheets. I mean, they just break. What the liquor store used to do is give them to people that wanted to use them to light their cigars. So you can't. So I found out going to the cigar store and asking for them. No, we don't want you to have them. We give them to our customers. The liquor store throws them away. So I said, hey.
Jim, two things, if I may. One, you must use fairly acid flux to solder.
No, don't use acid at all. Use rosin core.
Rosin core. Wow. The second thing was you mentioned that you were looking for 1/32 brass sheet.
No, 1/32 shapes. See, I used to use the 1/32 bar that I could get to frame windows. Now I have to make that 1/32, you know, because K&S doesn't make it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I used to use angles for the sides of buildings or the sides of cars and whatever I was working on. Can't get angles anymore. So now if I want to use it, I have to make the angle. That's what I'm saying. It's tedious to have to make the angle to use on something else. Mm-hmm. And so what I found out was there's a lot of different bits and pieces of 1/32 around the country in hobby shops, because K&S would supply the hobby shops and they had the K&S box or what display, you know, I'm talking about, with all the different stuff in it. Yeah. So there's 1/32 stuff here and here and there and there. And the lady in California that I had on the show in Meetup, when I won that prize from that convention, she said, what do you want? And I said, 1/32 brass. And she said, I don't know where I can get it. I said, I don't either, but that's what I need. And she found me 1/32 brass bars. She found them, they're not exactly what I would have preferred. It's 1/32 by 3/32, but it's better than nothing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And how do you make it? You cut it. You cut it, and then you bend it. If you want an angle, I make the angles oversized and then cut them down.
Buy lots of knives.
What do you cut? No. What do you cut them with? Scissors.
No, never thought of that.
Keep it simple. Make it fun. Just normal household scissors is what I use. The big ones, you know, the longer ones, and then the medium and the little one.
Jim, do you have a break that you use to form your angles?
No, I really don't. I take a piece of 5 thousandths brass, put it on a piece of glass, take my metal ruler and hold it with my fingers and with my 1, 2, 3 blocks, and I bend it. And then I cut each side down to a thickness that I want, and that becomes my angle. For the straight pieces, for the bars, I simply watch my fingers very carefully and have drawn the line down the piece of brass that I want to cut, and then I just cut it out with the scissors. The hardest thing to do then is to straighten it because it wants to curl because it's so thin and it's so it's not that wide, and so I bang the hell out of it on my angle with the hammer and straighten it out. And if you bang it on one side and then it'll round up that way, you turn it over and you bang it on that side, and pretty soon you'll get it straightened out. It's just tedious to do it. K&S used to make it, you just buy it in package. You could use it, but they stopped making it.
Hey, Jim, it's very interesting. Some of the methods that you're using to cut brass is what we use to cut thin plastic sheet. And if it's too thick, the scissors are having trouble, I just go grab my tin snips, snip, snip, snip. You got your cut, and even though it's thick, you know. And if you don't like that little edge that those give, just take a fine file and just go down the edge. It sounds like almost the same as what you're doing in brass.
Of course it is, and it's not rocket science. I'm telling you. If you can build in cardstock, you can build in brass.
Yeah.
But people say, my God, he builds in brass. Geez, he's got to be super duper whoop. No, not at all. It's just the material that I prefer to build in.
Yeah.
I think the big question now is who's building in brass? Now that you know how.
I think the biggest problem would be finding what you need now. It's getting it where you want it. Is getting it from the sources.
K&S, but you see the problem with K&S, my minimum order from K&S has to be at minimum $100. So I stock up when I buy from K&S. So what I found out from Anita is you buy it from the hobby shop. Therefore, you don't have to pay the high shipping costs that K&S has, in my opinion, and you don't have the minimum that K&S requires. Let the hobby shop take care of those details for you. That's why, to me, the segment that we started, Let's Go to the Hobby Shop, that's one of the things that I learned. It never occurred to me to go to a local hobby shop and see if they can shop around the world for me and find me 1/32 brass. That never occurred to me. If it hadn't have been for Anita Walker telling me that she was willing to do that for me, I'd never known that was possible, and I'd never have the amount of 1/32 brass I have right now.
And you're also supporting your hobby shop.
Exactly. And it's a reason, that's why I decided to try to promote the hobby shop. Now, also what I've done, I found out about 3 days ago of the organization called the National Retail Hobby Shops Association. And I called them up and I said, hi, I'm Jim Kellow. I have this show. I'd like for your members to come on. I'd like to join your organization, even though I don't have a hobby shop, because I believe that promoting hobby shops is something that would be good for the hobby, good for the modelers that come on my show. And frankly, I'd like to be a part of that. And the guy said, well, we'd like for you to write an article for us in our magazine. If you'll make a proposal in writing, I'll take it to the board of directors and see if I can get our hobby shops to participate with you. And I thought, well, geez, this is pretty simple. So if I can get the hobby shops that way without having to figure out with you guys having to give me names and so forth, and then me having to call each one of them, if I can just talk to their board over a Zoom call and then have their board, start promoting our show on their website and with their members, I think that's a good deal for us. So then I thought, well, if that worked, what about manufacturers? So I called the Hobby Manufacturing Association that represents hobbyists, different hobbies, plastic, cars, trucks, RC, everything. And I made the same pitch. Hey, I'm Jim Kellow, and I have this show. We have modelers and so forth, and I'd like your manufacturers to be part of it. I'd like for your manufacturers to give scholarships like Walters is to young model railroaders. I'd like for you to be working with the Association of Professional Model Makers because I think model railroaders can be future professional model makers. And I think if you guys could offer them internships and scholarships and work with model railroaders to bring them along, I think that would be beneficial. Plus, I really believe that if you want to attract young people into our hobby, the two best ways to do it is offer them help getting scholarships for college and give them career opportunities once they're out of school. And I said, if you can do those two things, then I think you have a money basis for an individual to consider our hobby. So they said, okay, we'll make you a nonprofit member. I said, great, I'm not a manufacturer, but yeah, I'll support that. So I became a nonprofit member of their organization. And then I wrote up the other day, basically what I just said and sent it to them so that she could take it to her board and make sure that they don't have any problem with me posting on my board back here that we're members of that association and get their members, the manufacturers, to come on our show and to be a part of what we're talking about. So if I can get both of those two groups working with us, I think that's good for the hobby. I think that's good for our show. And I think it'll open up a lot of doors for companies and for individuals, maybe to offer help in producing our shows and also to come on our shows and offer us different opportunities and so forth. And that's what this is all about. So that's where we're going.
Thanks, Jim.
Yes, sir. Anybody else? Well, I appreciate your attention this evening. I hope you learned something. I thank you so much for coming. Next time is Wednesday, July the 7th. After the 4th, which is tomorrow, and I hope everybody has a great holiday and really enjoys themselves. Our featured modeler is going to be Fred Stocker and his model railroad. Fred is, I think, 84 now. He's never built a model railroad before. He built this one in 1 year. One of the people that normally attends our show, Phil Edholm, is the one that told me about him and got me in touch with him. And I really think you're going to enjoy talking to him and seeing his model railroad. And what this man at his age could accomplish in 1 year is amazing to me. We've got special segments with Martin Breckfield, MMR. Bill Davis is Build Along of the LaBelle kit. Jamie Bothwell is passenger car underbody detail. And Earl Haggett still making his 3D prints for us. And I've got a question. So please visit our website, newtracksmodeling.com, for more information on our upcoming shows and what we're all about and what we're doing. Send me an email with any comments or suggestions you may have. And thanks so much again for coming tonight and being with us. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the show, and happy modeling to you. And Ed, that's it.
All aboard, new tracks. All aboard.